You know, some fears, they never really leave you. They start as just a story, a whisper from someone you love, and then, well, then they become a part of you. This is one of those stories.
Now, that's a pretty wild statement, right? It comes from a man who, for 28 years, has lived with a very specific fear. A fear born from a single story that his grandmother told him when he was just a kid.
So it all started when he was 10, and his grandma moved in. And she sounds like she was an absolute spark of life. You know, loud, funny, always had a supply of hard candies, and just had that warm, safe grandma presence. But her real specialty? Her stories. Oh, she had all kinds. Funny ones, sad ones, but his favorites were always the scary ones. She'd claim she dabbled in the occult, and while he just laughed most of it off, there was one story. That one never, ever left him. See, he started to notice something a little odd. His grandma would spend hours in the bathtub, but she never, not once, used the shower. So one night, he just asked a simple, innocent question that would pretty much change his entire life.
And just like that, her whole playful vibe just vanished. People like us, she told him, were more sensitive to certain things. Things that lurk. Things that made showers way too risky.
Then she leaned in close and dropped the rule on him, in this low whisper that made it feel less like a warning and more like an unbreakable law of the universe. You get a 10-second limit, that's it.
She actually called it a game. Yeah, some game. When you close your eyes in the shower, the heat and the steam, you summon something. And that something has a name. Mr. Longfingers. She said nobody really knew what he was. Just that he's drawn to the scent of soap and skin, and he moves through the steam right when your guard is down. And the reason no one knows for sure, well, it's pretty simple.
That implication just hung there in the air between them. Cold. Final. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a warning, delivered with this terrifying certainty. And then she laid out the play-by-play. 5 seconds with your eyes closed, you're fine. 10 seconds, you're really pushing your luck. But at 15 seconds, that's when he lets you know he's there.
He barely slept a wink that night, and the next morning, what should have been a totally normal shower, felt like a life-or-death mission. He tried to be brave, but the second that warm water hit his skin, the counting started. 1, 2, 5, 9, 10.
And at 12 seconds, he heard it. Just this faint sound, like fingertips barely brushing against the glass. He sucked in a breath, threw his eyes open, and saw nothing. But he knew. He knew what he'd heard.
And that was it. The fear had taken root. His panicked counting became a daily ritual. Of course, his mom eventually found him crying and totally terrified at the shower, and she was furious, not at him, but at his grandmother.
Later that night, his grandma came to his room looking exhausted, and she made him a promise that would end up haunting him for the rest of his life. She was going to make it safe for him again. About a week goes by. Then, around 5 in the morning, still dark outside, the sound of the shower running cuts through the quiet of the house. And he knew. In that instant, he knew exactly who it was and why. He bolted to the bathroom door, yelling her name, but no answer. Just the steady hiss of the water. And underneath it, another sound was starting. And this time, it wasn't faint. Not at all. It was clear, rhythmic, deliberate. It was the sound of long fingers drumming against the glass door. A wave of hot steam just poured out, blinding him for a second as he pushed the door open. And then, he saw her. She was on the floor of the shower. Her eyes were wide open, just staring at nothing. And her hand was pressed flat against the shower door, with these impossible streaks dragging down through the condensation on the glass. He's 38 years old now. He has a wife, 2 kids, a whole life. And for 28 years since that morning, he has not taken a single shower. The official story was a heart attack. Quick, painless. His wife thinks he's just deeply traumatized by finding the body, which, makes sense. But he knows that's not the whole story. He had to know. He had to see for himself. So the night after they took her body away, he went back into that bathroom. The room was cold, the mirror still foggy, and he just stood there in the quiet and stared at that glass shower door.
And as the very last of that condensation began to clear, something else came into view,
something that had been hidden by the steam the whole time.
3 clear finger marks were pressed into the glass from the inside, and they were impossibly long, way too long to be his grandmother's, which meant she hadn't been alone in that shower after all.